Janet is paid $7.60 per hour for a regular 40-hour week. Overtime hours are paid at time and a half. The chart below is a record of the hours Janet worked last week. So on Monday, Janet worked 8 hours. On Tuesday, she worked 7 hours. On Wednesday, she worked nine hours. On Thursday, she worked 9 hours. And on Friday, she worked 10 hours. And the question states, calculate the regular earnings for the 5 days. And so in order for us to calculate her regular earnings for the 5 days, what we have to do is we have to take her hourly rate, how much she's paid per hour, which is $7.60, and we have to multiply it by 40 hours, because 40 hours is going to be the amount of hours that she worked in a regular 40-hour work week. And so we have 40 multiplied by $7.60. And when we multiply these two together, we get $304. And so that means that her regular earnings for the 5 days is going to be $304. Next, the question asks us to determine or to calculate the overtime hours worked. So how many hours of overtime did she work? The first thing we're going to do in order to figure out the number of overtime hours worked is that we're going to add up all of the hours that she worked. So how many hours did she work in totality? So let's add them up. We have 8 plus 7 plus 9 plus 9 plus 10. And then when we add these together, we're going to subtract it from 40, because 40 is the regular amount of hours that she have to work in a regular work week. And so we have 8 plus 7 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 9 plus 9 plus 10. That's going to give us 43 hours. And so that means that for this particular week, for last week rather, she worked 43 hours. And we subtract that from 40. And we subtract it with 40 and we get 3 hours. So that means that her overtime hours is 3 hours. So the number of hours that she worked overtime is 3 hours. Next, the question asks us to determine or to calculate her overtime earnings. And so in order for us to calculate her overtime earnings, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to determine how much is she going to get paid for 1 hour of overtime. So if she worked 1 hour of overtime, how much is she supposed to get paid? Notice that it says here that overtime hours are paid at time and a half. And so since they said time and a half, we have to multiply her hourly rate by 1.5. Now, if they said that overtime hours is paid at double time, then you would have to multiply it by 2. But they say time and a half. So time and a half means we're gonna use 1.5, right? So we're gonna say 1.5 multiplied by her hourly rate. And so we have to multiply 1.5 by $7.60, and that gives us $11.40. And so her overtime earnings for 1 hour of overtime is going to be $11.40. Next, we have to determine how much she worked for 3 hours of overtime, because that's how much hours of overtime that she worked for this particular week. So we're going to multiply 3 by $11.40. And when we do that, we get $34.20. And so that means that our overtime earnings is going to be $34.20. Next, the question asks us to determine or to calculate the total earnings for the week. Now, if we want to determine or calculate her total earnings for the week, we have to add her regular earnings plus her overtime pay. So we're gonna have to take into consideration her regular pay plus her overtime pay. Her regular pay is $304, and her overtime pay is $34.20. And so let's add those two together. And when we add those two together, we get $338.20. And so that means that our total earnings for this week is going to be $338.20.